What is up, Insaners, and welcome to the first ever stream of the FPL season 2022-23. Yes, the 21-22 season is over. FPL is back again. FPL just went live, and in fact, we had to kind of miss it. We had to kind of miss the launch, but nevertheless, we are back with the first stream. The chaos is back. It kind of feels that the holiday was not long enough, but of course, we were all craving and longing for FPL. So from that aspect, I think it's pretty good. We are back with the game. The game has launched. All the FPL price reveals happened before the launch. There are a few things that are kind of new. There are a few changes in terms of not the overall structure of the game, but yes, of course, there have been certain rises, maybe even falls, maybe changes overall, which we'll talk about. And yes, we will start kind of building towards the team in terms of what are the initial thoughts, what are the first thoughts in terms of having the first draft in place. Yes, a lot will change throughout the preseason because it's a long preseason, and I think it's a very important one as well because so much is changing, and we'll kind of deep dive into what is changing in this particular preseason. So yes, we can't lock in our teams, but we'll of course talk about players. We'll talk about different strategies, different formations, different templates because believe it or not, it's been probably about 12 hours or so since the game got launched. Maybe I think almost a day, in fact. No, not 12 hours, but probably a day. And almost we've kind of seen a certain template forming up very, very early. And there are certain players that are already kind of, people are kind of walking towards them. There's a lot of debate around certain players in terms of what can happen or what will happen if they probably go for alternate picks, all of that stuff. There are differential picks already forming and emerging in the game that early. So I think we'll kind of deep dive into what can be done there. Of course, we'll also talk about early strategy, short term planning, long term planning. So there's a lot to kind of unpack, of course, but we'll go step by step. We'll also kind of build our team. I have not seen anything at all in the FPL game, so I just went live today in terms of just setting up the team, all the basic stuff. And then I just kind of auto pick the team because I wanted to do this live. I've not really thought about it a lot. So I think a lot of these thoughts will be very initial thoughts. And once we kind of move towards the preseason, move towards different kind of content that we'll be doing, of course there'll be a lot of strategy, there'll be a lot of thought going into the first game week team, and we'll kind of go from there. So I think it's going to be interesting, it's going to be on the fly, and we'll see how it goes. Help me out with your teams as well. If you have any thoughts on certain players, anything at all, please feel free to share that in the chat, in the comments below. You can also subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. You can like the stream if you enjoy today. Of course, we'll be doing this for quite a long time, for the whole season. It's just the new season starting. Very, very excited to kind of see where it leads to. This is the World Cup year as well. That's going to be very, very massive. You can call it a wildcard chip, you can call it one additional chip, but there's something extra to unpack there as well. So we'll kind of talk about that as well. So first we'll kind of move towards our team in terms of what we have right here. Of course, there's nothing here. We have a blank canvas. We will kind of make some changes. But I think before we kind of do this, price reveals, etc., we can probably talk about prices as well. And once we're kind of making the team, we'll also talk about the wildcard and what are the thoughts in terms of when you can use the first wildcard. Of course, there'll be a lot of changes in terms of what you can do, alternate strategies, etc. But we'll kind of move towards when we're building the team. So I think in terms of goalkeepers, we'll probably go by position because that's going to be it's going to be a lot simpler. Hey Shan, first of all, welcome to you as well. Chaos of FPL is back. Absolutely, it's back, and a lot will happen this season. I think there's so many new elements kind of involved, not in terms of the game, but so many players joining, especially the top teams like Man City, teams like Liverpool. These guys have already signed certain players. They could be change in structure, they could be change in formation, there could be change in overall play. So I think that's the reason the preseason gonna be really, really important. But yeah, looking forward to it. Really, really excited. Hoping to do better than last season because last season went really, really well for most of the time, apart from I think the last couple of maybe probably 5 to 6 weeks where we kind of it kind of went downhill. But we'll see. You have 2 drafts right now. You need your help to see which one's better. Absolutely. Just feel free to share your team if you can in the chat only, and we can take it from there. Hey Savio, hello to you. Your first draft had no Salah, of course. It'll change later, but it's fine. Of course. There are conversations to be had. Absolutely. as an FPL manager, it's very, very important to keep your mind very open, very flexible. Having said that, yes, going without Salah is a huge risk because he's that kind of a player, right? I mean, going without Salah is scary. It's kind of risky. The returns that he generally provides over the season, yes, I know that he, kind of spiraled downwards over the second half of the season, most of the second half of the season. But then again, he's a quick starter, he's a fast starter, he's a very crucial player for Liverpool. He signed a new contract. I think he'll be raring to go, right? And there is, I mean, there are chances that he can probably have a consistent season this season because there's no World Cup for him. So when most of the international players will be off for the World Cup, he will be getting a lot of rest. So I think there are chances that he can probably, I mean, he doesn't overplay, he doesn't tire himself, he doesn't get fatigued, and there are chances that he can continue his overall form throughout the season, which happened in the early part of the last season. So we'll see. In terms of just generally talking about keepers, I think, and I'll cover a bit of pricing here as well. I mean, a couple of really surprising picks. I mean, I was not really surprised by the likes of Sanchez, Raya, maybe a couple of other 4.5 million goalkeepers, but one of the biggest surprises was kind of understanding how Chelsea has been priced and how Mendy has been priced because Mendy's 5 million in the game. He's playing for a premium defense. He's playing for Chelsea, which is a good defense. Of course, there are a couple of players that have already left the club. Rudiger has left the club. Christensen has left the club. So there'll be certain void in terms of their defensive positions that Chelsea has right now. Yes, they're still striving towards signing certain players, and I'm sure there are going to be certain signings in there. But I mean, in general, I think Mendy probably deserved a 5.5 sort of a price because Edison's 5.5. You have Alisson as well, who's also 5.5. Having said that, I'm not too sure how many people will be kind of going towards Mendy particularly because there's an option to go a bit cheaper, and then you could probably invest that little additional money, probably a wing back in a full back, for example, in a certain attacking defender, which can probably give you a lot more points because Mendy won't have that high of a ceiling. If you look at his overall ceiling, it's probably going to be 6 or 2 points majority of the game weeks. I mean, he is not some sort of keeper who makes a lot of saves, so he won't be getting a lot of bonus points. I mean, you don't often see penalty saves that regularly, so that's probably not going to happen as much as you probably would have hoped for. So I mean, going for a 4.5 goalkeeper makes a lot more sense. So when we just look at goalkeepers, I think Ramsey is also 5, so he's also not an option this time around. But yeah, I mean, it's a close call between a Sanchez and a Raya. If you look at Sanchez's fixtures, I mean, first game is against United. Again, absolutely clean slate. We don't know what's going to happen with United. There would be certain signings. There would be certain players, coming in. Their defense might get a little bit stronger. I mean, there are a lot of unknowns there, right? So you can still take a chance with Man United. Then it's Newcastle, West Ham. So the first 3 fixtures are not that easy. I mean, they could be a bit tricky, in fact. Then they have Leeds, Fulham, Leicester. So there's a consistent run when in game week 9 they have Liverpool. That could be a tricky fixture. But overall, I think it's a decent amount of fixtures. On the other hand, if you look at Raya as well, I mean, Raya is also a decent option to go for. Brentford, if just keeping both defenses on the same level. If you look at both defenses, Brighton is generally a lot more tighter. They generally concede lesser goals. They have a high tendency to keep clean sheets. That generally doesn't happen with Brentford. Brentford is not a leaky defense. Yes, they still concede goals. They still don't keep as many clean sheets as they probably could have last season. But I think this season it could be different. It could be a lot more tighter. They have signed a couple of players, so that could also help their defense. Their run is, in fact, slightly better than what Brighton has, right? So I think going for Raya makes a lot more sense. So we'll probably just stick in Raya for now. Again, this is just a preliminary draft. It's an early draft. A lot can change. But just to kind of, set up bases, right? I probably am not looking at a very expensive keeper, maybe a 5.5 keeper, because I could get that value from an attacking fullback or a wingback or a defender who can, give me any sort of attacking returns. So we'll probably look at that. Second goalkeeper, I'm definitely not going to, invest a lot of money in the second goalkeeper. I personally am not a big fan of rotating keepers, right? A lot of people, I see a lot of people going for rotating keepers, going for, keepers where they can play a particular pick in certain games where the fixtures are slightly easier. Maybe that's a straightforward call, right? If the second keeper has trickier fixtures, then probably it's not a decision to be made there. But when you have, green fixtures for both the keepers, and probably when, both keepers are playing each other, of course, that's going to be a very less possibility in the larger scheme of things. But then it becomes trickier because you have a tendency, or you would probably, make that wrong call more often than not, right? Where you get a keeper, you are expecting that keeper to probably keep a clean sheet, and the keeper that is on your bench gets maybe 7-8 points, maybe even more points, and then you are, left regretting your decision in terms of why did you not choose the keeper who's on your bench currently, right? So personally, for me, again, I'm not saying it's a wrong strategy, but I just feel that, going for a second keeper who is a playing keeper, probably you can save that much money, you can probably invest it somewhere else as well. So in terms of the 4 million goalkeepers, I don't really see anyone starting, to be very, very honest. I mean, it's probably going to be, we'll just take one keeper from a particular team where we're not really spending a lot of, I mean, we're not getting a lot of players from that particular team. So let's say we probably go with Steel, for example. We just keep, just an option as a 4 million option. Now, in terms of the defense, right? So now there is a strategy. I mean, there are multiple strategies, of course. One of the strategies is that you probably go a bit heavier at the back, and that's predominantly going to be a very popular strategy because last season we saw, defenders like Trent, Robertson, who are generally players who give a lot of FPL points. You also saw the likes of Chilwell, James doing really well as and when they were fit, and as and when Chilwell was fit. I think he had a really great run in terms of attacking returns. Then you also have the likes of Cancelo. There could be a second, defender option from Man City as well. There's a lot of chatter in terms of which one to go for, whether to go for Walker, whether he's a legitimate option, or if we get a Cucurella, for example. Cucurella at a 5 million price range, I think that could be a great option as well. But again, there's a slight risk of rotation in terms of which player is going to start in that particular position. But there is a conversation to be made there where we can actually go for a Man City second defender, because Man City traditionally has been doing really well. They have a really strong defense. And, last season we saw that the Pep roulette and the rotation was a lot lesser than what has been the case since so long, right? So, I mean, there is a chance that we can go for a second Man City defender as well. In terms of other options, of course, we can, look at Tottenham, we can look at Arsenal. I think to start off with, I think one defender that is pretty much locked in terms of his output, I think, is Trent. Again, if you have a different opinion, let me know, in the chat below. But I think Trent is probably somebody that you would probably not want to miss on because, I mean, we all know his attacking potential. We all know what he can do, from the dead ball. He's really, really good in set pieces. He has the chance, he has the opportunity to, get goals, get assists. Of course, his creative numbers are a lot more higher, as you would probably expect from a fullback. We know that he bombs forwards. We know that he makes a lot of attacking runs. So there are chances, there are a lot of outlets. And I mean, I don't really have to tell, about Trent and what he can do. The next option probably, a Man City defender, because Man City also, I mean, Liverpool and Man City both have really good fixtures early on, right? So we can probably target those early on fixtures. We can get in Cancelo, and we probably have a different conversation in terms of a, alternate Man City pick. But right now, let's say for the sake of conversation, we have Cancelo, which is also a great option. I mean, we again know what Cancelo does, how well he's performed. I mean, there is a conversation that there could be certain rotation, etc., because of the 5 substitution rule, which can absolutely happen. But I still feel he's probably gonna get majority minutes, and he doesn't get rested. He probably can come off a little earlier, but I don't think so. He's absolutely gonna get rested, right? So I think Cancelo looks a very good option. And now there is a decision to be made here, because if you want to go very heavy on the back, you probably would want to double up on a certain defense. Yes, there is still a chance that you might not double up. I mean, you can go for 5 different defenders. But if you want to double up, I think Liverpool absolutely is the best option to go for. Having a combination of a Trent and a Robertson, yes, it's a lot of money. It's 14.5 million, so that's not less at all. That's almost 15% of your entire team, right? So yes, there's a decision to be made, but I think if you are doubling up on a particular defense, I think going for Robertson is a really, really good option. In my case, again, it's too early to kind of lock in into a particular team. But again, just for the sake of the argument, let's say if you're making a particular draft which is very heavy in terms of premium defenders, we'll probably have Robertson. Then I think the conversation kind of shifts towards what are you going to do with those 2 other spots. If you're going 5 at the back, then you would want to have those 5 premium defenders, or wing back or full back options who will give you attacking returns, right? So then you have an option to choose between, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Tottenham, which probably are the best defenses. In case if you, let's say, if the strategy is to probably play, with 4 or maybe 3 premium options, and you're looking at 2 other cheaper options, in that particular case, you can look at, 4.5 million defenders as well. I mean, there are a lot of options in terms of 4.5. If we just go by what has been selected so far, right? I mean, it's not a correct metric, and we're absolutely not going to do that. But again, just for the sake of the argument and the conversation here, I mean, Tomiyasu has been, there's a lot of hype around him in terms of what is he going to do. Let me know in the comments, let me know in the chat, what do you think about Tomiyasu in general? Because I had White for a very, very long time last season. It kind of didn't work out because White, we know that he doesn't really give a lot of attacking returns. He's good with bonus points. So especially when Arsenal is probably, playing a close game where they probably win 1-0. If it's a 0-0 sort of a game, but it's a draw, right? White has a tendency to kind of drop in terms of bonus points because of the way he plays, the passing, interceptions, blocks, and in general, his movement on the pitch, all of that stuff combined. I think there are chances that he gets a lot of bonus points, and I think that will continue to happen, right? But on the other hand, you have Tomiyasu, who I know it's been already been hyped. I mean, if you see the percentages here, he's already owned by 19% of teams, right? So if that shows that if people are looking at a 4.5 million option, he's probably the most popular one here. Now, there is a plus side to it and a negative side to it as well. I mean, the plus or the positive here is that he's a fullback. He's gonna play on the right side, but he's a defensive-minded fullback, right? So, and that's where the negative or the con comes in, because he probably won't be as advanced as a Tierney, right? His crossing maybe might not be as good as a Tierney, for example. Of course, we have seen certain things from him. He's been a very good defender, but in terms of the attacking potential, I'm still not there yet. And yes, the preseason will also kind of tell us in terms of what's happening at what position. I mean, how is he playing? What are the fitness levels? And I think that is kind of consistent for all players across different teams, right? Because there's a lot to be, gauged there. There's a lot to be understood there. But I mean, if you want to go for a cheaper option, you probably go for a Tomiyasu right now. I'm still not sold on him yet. If you're looking at other options, let's say if you're not convinced by a Tomiyasu, then you probably can look at a Wolves defender as well. I mean, if you look at Wolves, you have a couple of options here. You have Ait Nouri, you have Johnny as well. And I think this is where the Wolves preseason also becomes really, really important, because I think if you're able to figure out that 4.5 million nailed defender from Wolves, right, I think that's going to be very crucial, because if you look at their fixtures, you just quickly look at Wolves fixtures. I mean, they have Leeds, Fulham, which are two opening really great fixtures. I mean, you can absolutely play a Johnny or an Ait Nouri, for example, whosoever you go for. Tottenham, again, could be a very open game. We don't know what system or how, I mean, how Wolves are going to play, because Wolves traditionally, I mean, their numbers have regressed. They're not a very attacking team in general now. They're sound defensively, so there is clean sheet potential as well. I mean, if you're lucky, you can also get an attacking return here and there, and that could be gold in terms of FPL, considering that you're only spending about 4.5 million on this particular player or defender, right? Then you have the likes of, Bournemouth, Southampton. Game week 7 is where you kind of, would probably want to either bench him or move on to a different defender, and we'll talk about possible options. But there's a case to be made for a Wolves defender as well. Of course, we'll still have to see which one is kind of nailed, whether it's Ait Nouri, whether it's Johnny. I don't see any other potential options from the Wolves team in terms of, a cheaper option. But I think these are, I mean, the Arsenal defenders, Tomiyasu and White, for example. You have options from Wolves as well, where you have Johnny and Ait Nouri. You can even target a Leicester defender. I mean, we know that Leicester was quite open at the back last season. They were conceding a lot of goals. They weren't really keeping a lot of clean sheets. But for the attacking output, if we look at the likes of Justin, fixtures are mixed. I mean, in the first 5-6 games, they have Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal. There's Brentford, there is Southampton as well. There is Brighton in game week 6. So, I mean, it's probably not a very straightforward start. I mean, if you want a Leicester asset in general, I think you'd probably want to look at Leicester from game week 9 when they are facing Nottingham Forest. By that time, we'll also have an idea, or, we'll have a sample size in terms of data, in terms of who's starting where, who is getting more minutes, who's probably getting more substituted, or who's probably, who's being benched for majority games. What is the formation? What is the structure that Brendan Rodgers is kind of following for Leicester? Because Leicester assets, I think this season they are probably going to be in play in terms of FPL, which didn't happen a lot last season because of their commitments in Europe. This season they don't have any European games. And I think it's probably kind of a situation where, in terms of what was happening with Arsenal last season, where they didn't have any, they didn't have Europe at all, right? And that's what's going to happen with Leicester this season. So it could be really interesting to kind of, get on to Leicester assets when the run is right, when the games and the fixtures are kind of easing up. And game week 9 is some a particular point where I see that happening. So from game week 9, they probably just, I mean, yes, fixtures could be a bit tricky. Wolves could be a bit tricky in terms of, they being defensively very strong. But they have Man City 14, which will absolutely be a tough fixture. But I think in general the run is really really good. I mean, if you see here, there's a lot of green, right? So you can go for Leicester as well, but I mean, I would probably want to go for an Arsenal attacker if I'm Arsenal defender if I'm looking at a cheaper option. But in case if you are looking at a fourth premium option, then I think you'll probably have to choose between a Perisic, maybe a James, and a Chilwell. Now, because of the fifth substitution or the five substitution rule, there is a high possibility that James probably gets more rotated, or more, maybe he comes off around the 60th minute just to give him some rest. Just the way he plays, right? Tuchel would want to keep him fit for a longer duration this season. Chilwell, yes, of course, he's returning from injury, so we don't know what's going to happen there. How is he going to play? But I mean, whatever I've seen of Chilwell, and I think the preseason is going to be again really really important in that regard. I think Chilwell could be more nailed. I think he could get. I mean, in terms of attacking output, attacking returns, there's not a lot to split between the two. And of course, Chilwell didn't have a sustained or a consistent run to kind of compare that data. But in terms of whatever Chilwell played, I think he was on par, in fact, slightly better than what James was doing at that moment. So I think it could be a close call. But again, for the sake of the argument here, we'll probably go with Chilwell right now. We won't be going for James. But yeah, I mean, again, the preseason would probably help us, gauge some more idea. But I think I've selected James here. I will go for Chilwell. But yeah, Chilwell looks decent. Yes, there are some question marks around Chelsea in terms of what will happen to their defense. A couple of players going, they're targeting more defenders. If they can keep clean sheets and if they can keep their defense, very strong, the likes of James and Chilwell with the attacking output. I mean, you can imagine them being at 6 million, and 6 million is not a lot of price, a lot of money for defenders like James and Chilwell. So that could be, a cheaper way to kind of get towards maybe a Trent or a Robertson. Of course, they're not Trent and Robertson, absolutely not. But they have that potential, right? And if Chelsea could keep clean sheet, I think they could be really, really good as well. In terms of current ownership, we see, I think 42% is James. Of course, it's also because of the way James generally plays. He's very explosive, so he has that potential to get you, 15, 20, even 25 points. I mean, that can absolutely happen, right? In terms of the fifth defender, now this becomes very interesting. So if you're playing a 4 at the back, I think this is pretty solid. But if you are also targeting a fifth premium defender or a fifth defender that you're probably going to play week in, week out, then there's a conversation to be made whether you want to go for somebody like a Chilwell, if you, let's say, have James, or the other way around. You can even go for somebody from Tottenham, and there's one particular player who's already very, very popular. I mean, you look at the ownership right now. Perisic is owned by 48% of teams. I mean, almost 49. It'll reach 49 very, very soon. There is a lot of conversation in terms of whether Perisic is going to start or not, whether he'll probably get some, maybe some cameos. We know that Conte likes his wingbacks. We know that a certain wingback will be playing unless he goes to a back four, where the appeal of these wingbacks would generally reduce. I mean, even for Chelsea, right? I mean, if Chelsea go to a back four, then the appeal of Chilwell and James might reduce a little bit. But then again, with Conte, we've generally known him to play 3 at the back. And with that, he'll also have wing backs, right? So, but the conversation here is that who's going to play on which side, because there are options. I mean, there's Reguilon who gets injured a lot, who doesn't stay fit for a long time. I think he's not even that consistent to kind of warrant his place for a longer period of time. Perisic under Conte, what we've seen so far, I mean, he did really, really well. He's had good seasons where, he's scoring more goals. Of course, it's a different league. The quality of opposition is absolutely very, very different. Premier League is a whole different ball game altogether. He's coming to the Premier League, I think, for the first time. So there are question marks in terms of what's going to happen, but the early hype is a bit too much in terms of what Perisic can do. He's 5.5. He's quite attacking. He scores a lot of goals. He creates as well. So the essential ingredients of a great pick are already there, right? But do we know that he's going to start every game? Right now, you cannot. I mean, it'll be very weird to kind of, have that notion already that he's probably going to start every game, because that's absolutely not a certainty yet, right? But yeah, again, preseason in terms of where he's playing, I generally think he'll be playing on the left as a wing back. But again, how Conte uses him, how what kind of players is he dictating, how much forward is he going, what are the positions that he's occupying in the opposition half, how much is he shooting, how much probably he's cutting inside. I mean, all of these minor details, right? I mean, they are really, really important. And it's really important to see how Spurs kind of, and Perisic kind of fit into that whole system. So yes, he could be an option if you're looking at a kind of a premium option, because I still believe that if he can do well, I would still kind of put him in the premium category. In terms of other options, I probably would have look at, again, Doherty is another option at 5 million. You probably, saving 0.5 million here, but it could be very different, because with Doherty as well, we don't know. He tends to get injured a lot as well. And right now, there's a lot of question marks in terms of who's going to play for Spurs, right? I mean, anyone who tells you that Perisic is absolutely nailed or Doherty is absolutely nailed, probably, is of course, their own thoughts, and probably they would have a reason behind it. But then again, right now, with no information at all, I think it'll be very difficult to kind of make that assessment just yet. But yeah, like, again, we'll probably go with Perisic here. This is not my draft. Again, I'm just kind of building it on the fly, building it as we move on in terms of understanding different prices, different players, and we kind of also go for alternate picks here, right? So we can give you some idea in terms of what could be the alternate solutions here. Now, in terms of, I think the back five is pretty set. It's very clear from this formation and the set of players that we've gone for so far is that we're going with the back five. Now the idea is whether we go for a 5-2-3, which is kind of a weird formation, or we probably go with a 5-4-1. Maybe we go with a 5-3-2 as well. I mean, there are multiple formations that we can choose here. I'm assuming this is a probably fair enough assumption that we'll probably go with Salah. I mean, there's still 40% people who don't have Salah in their teams, because we'll also probably make one draft in terms of not going for Salah and what we can do with that particular draft. But let's say if we go with Salah here, then there's a conversation to be made whether which premium do you want to go for, right? Do you want to go for somebody like a Son, which could be a bit tricky, because then you'll probably have to make shift or do with certain forwards who are not premium forwards, mid-range forwards, who might not even be that attacking. I mean, we saw what happened with forwards last season, right? So FPL, in terms of the pricing that they've done, they've kind of locked us out in terms of the third forward spot. Of course, we can still choose three forwards. That's absolutely within the realms of possibility here. But generally, what I've seen so far, people, and I think if you guys feel any different, do let me know in the chat below. Generally, what people have done here is that they've gone for Haaland or they've gone for Gabriel Jesus, right? It could be a possibility. I mean, Gabriel Jesus' ownership, we'll just quickly see what his ownership is. I think it's probably around 40%. Yeah, it's 44%, right? So probably what people have done here is that they've gone for Haaland, and they've probably played, a 5-4-1 or a 4-5-1 with two Dutch strikers. Or what they've done here is that they've probably played a 4-4-2 where they've gone for a Haaland and Jesus, and they've gone for Salah, and then they've kind of made some adjustment in terms of which midfielders to go for or which defenders to go for. There could be a possibility that they probably would have gone for two premium defenders, maybe two 4.5 defenders, and then probably invested that additional money in getting that second 8 million for midfielder spot, right? Because that is also very, very important. I mean, I generally feel, coming back to, I'm kind of jumping positions here, but coming back to midfielders, I think I've seen a lot of people already making drafts where they have, two midfielders, three midfielders, where they have Salah and they've gone for a Martinelli and, somebody like a Pereira. Of course, we'll talk about Pereira in a bit, but I still feel that, because what's happened in midfield, right? Midfield has about different, price ranges, but the pricing is a bit weird, right? And do let me know what you think about midfielders and how are they priced. I mean, what do you think about Mount? What do you think about Saka? Because they are the midfielders that are probably going to be very, very popular in general. I mean, Luis Diaz is also another one. In terms of, 8 million, probably just filter this by price. So we have Saka, we have Mount, we have Madison, Diaz, Mahrez, Foden, and Kulusevski, right? So I mean, there is variety. There is, there are options. And Swikar, as you've just mentioned, that Mahrez is gonna shine this year. This could be his year. Again, we don't know what's gonna happen with Man City. There are strong rumors and there are strong conversations that Sterling will probably leave Man City, and that eventually might happen. And then Gabriel Jesus is also not there. So what is going to happen on Man City is right. Whether Mahrez is going to play there, whether he's probably going to shift on the other side, which might not be a possibility. You already have the likes of Grealish, competing for a spot there. Foden is another one. Now that Haaland is there, what happens to Foden? Does he drop deep into the midfield? Does he go on the left and play alongside Haaland or a certain Mahrez? Maybe he has a floating role where he goes to the right and then cuts in and comes probably in the center as well, where Haaland occupies a certain position. I mean, there are multiple things that can happen here, of course, and it'll be interesting to see what happens actually. But I think having an 8 million midfielder spot looks like the way to go. Whether you go with 4 midfielders, whether you go with 3 midfielders, that 8 million midfield spot gives you a lot of flexibility. And do let me know what you think about this, because I think you can attack the fixtures in the beginning where you have Arsenal having good fixtures. You can probably stick a Saka in there. Saka without penalties, especially with the introduction of Gabriel Jesus, could be a bit tricky. Again, we have to see what happens to him. I still think I mean, all of a sudden, I don't think so. He's probably going to lose his place. Absolutely not. But I think with penalties or without penalties could be an important decision here, because his price is also not a 6 or a 6.5 million anymore. I mean, he's 8 million, right? So there is again a conversation to be had here. Chelsea is also very interesting because we don't know what's going to happen with Chelsea right now. As of now, Lukaku's gone. That's pretty much set and done. They don't have a number 9. They don't have a proper number 9. There are rumors about Ronaldo going there. I'm not going to get into a Man United conversation and probably another rant here, but we'll just leave it there. There could be a chance that they sign a number 9. Let's say, for the sake of the argument, let's say if somebody like Ronaldo probably comes in, what happens to Mount? What happens to the other players probably playing around? What happens to the structure that Tuchel will kind of adapt? Keeping in mind that number 9 or a striker that comes into play. In case if there's no striker, there's no signing, I'm pretty sure Havertz is the one who's going to play there. Now, with Havertz, playing up top and probably Mount kind of coming in deep and playing as a number 10 role, I mean, that could spell a lot of FPL points for Mount. One of the issues that I also talked about in one of the earlier price reveals video that we did was that a problem with Mount that, I mean, yeah, he's a very consistent option. Yes, there are moments or there are particular game weeks where he goes on these specific runs where he doesn't get a lot of FPL points on a regular basis. But I think in general, what we saw from Mount last season was that there is a chance, there is a potential to explode, there is a potential to get those 15-20 points, and that could absolutely happen, right? So depending on what happens with that number 9 striker spot, I think Mount could come into play. We also have Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz, in terms of what he did last season, deserves at least a starting place right now. But with Nunes into play, I think it's another very interesting conversation to be had in terms of what happens to Liverpool, because Liverpool have not had a striker like Nunes in a long time. Firmino had a very different role. Of course, it was really coming into play, and all the all the pieces of the puzzle were kind of fitting in very, very well. But with right now, in terms of what can happen to Liverpool and to Nunes, I think that will also kind of dictate what happens to Diaz, because of course we know that Salah is going to play every game. Whether Nunes plays as a number 9, I'm pretty sure he's gonna play as a number 9. Now, whether he starts every game or you have the likes of Jota probably playing in the center, playing in the middle, and then you have Diaz on the other side. So there are chances that he starts majority games, but there could be certain rotation as well, right? Now, the conversation here also is that whether you want to go for a Diaz as your, third option or a Robertson. I mean, that's a very legit conversation to be had. Do you think a Robertson, over a certain period of time, over a certain set of fixtures, because we're not talking about the entire season, right? We're talking about probably 6 to 8 fixtures in the beginning. Do you think Diaz probably, gets more minutes? Maybe not more minutes, but does he get more attacking returns? Does he get more FPL points? In simple terms, does he outscore a certain Robertson, right? That's a very important question that you probably have to ask yourself in terms of whether, again, if at all you're going for three Liverpool spots, right? Which I think you absolutely can, because Liverpool and Man City, they have really good fixtures. They're the best team in the league in terms of attack and defense. So there's absolutely a great case to be made with, in terms of your six players being kind of locked in. Of course, there's a lot of variety in terms of which ones to go for. Um, yeah, Saka, I think as per his last season, yeah, he's fairly priced. There are better options than him in that price bracket. I absolutely agree. And having that flexibility of keeping that 8 million price, I think that's really, really important. Hey, Shakib, I missed your message. Welcome to the stream. I hope you're doing fine. I'm doing great as well. Sterling has apparently agreed. I mean, yeah, that's what I read as well. Of course, till the time we don't hear that, here we go, we don't know what's gonna happen there. But I think, yeah, I mean, Sterling to City to Chelsea, sorry, looks pretty much done. As a Chelsea fan with players, we are being linked with. I also have read something similar that you might, or Chelsea might shift to a 4-2-3-1, and then in that particular spot, then the number 9 role becomes even more relevant and prominent. And I'm not sure Havertz is probably suited to that role, so they will definitely sign one striker. And in that sort of a formation, I think Mount would actually come into play, and he could be a great option. Savio, you're saying one factor to consider is that, yeah, I mean, you have to play, and will now probably now that you've kind of gotten into that conversation, you have to play your first wildcard by game week 7 and 8. Game week 8 is when the international break happens as well. So, I mean, that 9 to 16 window is also, is probably the option. Then you go 7 to 8 weeks. That the thing that you're absolutely saying is absolutely correct. You go 7 to 8 weeks before the World Cup, and then unlimited transfers during the Cup. So one information that probably if you are not aware, we also have. I mean, you can call it a wild card. I still don't know what the official term there is. If you guys know, please do let me know. But we will be getting unlimited transfers as soon as game week 16. It is game week 16 if I'm not wrong. Let me just quickly check it. But yeah, we will be getting as soon as the World Cup or the last game week before the World Cup happens. It's a kind of a reset where we'll be getting unlimited transfers, and it's a sort of a wild card where we can make unlimited changes to our team. But of course, the team value is going to be what you have at that point of time. So let's say, yes, there's 100 million allocated to you initially, but there'll be a lot of movement in terms of, certain players going up, certain players going down. And whatever team value your team is at that moment, let's say 102, 101, whatever XYZ amount is there, that will be your total value from which you can select players. And there will be a lot of players who will be changing in prices, who will have a very different price by that point of time. So I think that'll be really interesting. But again, it's not something very, very different, because during the pandemic, of course, the pandemic was a very different situation. But this was also something similar that happened. We got unlimited transfers after that huge break or a long break that we had. So yeah, it's game week 16. So after game week 16, when the World Cup starts, and before 26th December is when we are getting back for game week 17. So we get unlimited transfers. So I think overall, what Savio, and you also pointed this out, what we can take from this whole a rule change or a new addition or whatever you want to call it, is that this season we might not have to think very, very long term. I mean, when you're looking at a wild card, you're probably not looking at 2 or 3 game weeks. You're probably looking at least 8 to 10 game weeks, maybe even more, to kind of set up your team, set up your other chips as well. Of course, there's a lot of information that comes in. There are player injuries, there are new signings in January and all that stuff as well. So there's a lot of dynamic information that comes into play. But I think in general, there is a tendency of people to kind of look a little more or a little longer in terms of their wildcard planning, especially. But here we don't have to look at that. We probably have to look at 7 to 8 weeks in isolation. Maybe make blocks of those 7 to 8 game weeks. Look at the best team that you want to target. Look at the best players that you can get from those teams that you want to target, and then kind of make your decision. I think game week 9 is actually a good time to kind of, unless you've gotten it horribly wrong in game week 1 or game week 2 and you're already struggling. I think game week 8 or 9 looks like a decent option in terms of the first wildcard that you would want to use, right? Because you can build your team for the next 7 to 8 game weeks, and then you already are getting unlimited transfers, which will help you set up your team for the upcoming game weeks from game week 17. FPL Irishman says hi, hello to you as well. I mean, yeah, Trent and Robertson looks like a good combination. I mean, Robertson is still very less owned. I think his ownership is probably going to be around 11%. Yeah, something like that. So a good option, worked really well for me last season as well. And I think he's a bit underrated just because of certain options like a Chilwell, like a James, for example, who can probably explode more, who can probably give you more attacking returns. Though Robertson, if you look at Robertson's XG numbers and his overall just base FPL points, I mean, he did really well in the last half of the season. So, I mean, going for Trent and Robertson, looks like a very strong combination. Looks a lot stronger than maybe a Chilwell and a James right now. Again, a lot could change. In terms of going with Chilwell over James, I just have a feeling. I mean, it's a very early or a early hunch. I might be totally wrong here. This is the first time I'm actually seeing the game and actually seeing the prices. So this is just on the fly. Haven't really read anything at all. In terms of just absolute minutes, just because of the five substitution rule, I think there are chances that James probably could end up getting substituted maybe around the 50th 50 maybe around the 60th mark as well. Maybe he gets 70 75 minutes and is probably is taken off at that point of time. There is a flexibility here. There are a couple of extra substitutions that now every manager has to kind of fit into their thinking, and that will also kind of give a rest, other than in case if Chelsea's absolutely losing and they need James to be on the pitch because he's one of their best players absolutely in terms of what he can do, especially from an FPL potential. So there are probably chances that Chilwell, if he's okay, if he's fit, if he's fine in the preseason, I think there are chances that he could probably last more minutes. But that's just an early hunch. Could be I mean, I have not really seen any data in absolute right now. Of course, there's nothing to see in terms of the new season. But yeah, let's see. It's just a hunch. Could absolutely change. Not really fixed on it. Doherty stays fit. I mean, yeah, if Doherty stays fit, he could be a good option as well. The question about, I mean, I'm a lot more certain in terms of what happens with the Chelsea defense. Maybe not the structure right now. Maybe the structure could change, as Shane also pointed out. 4-2-3-1 could be into play, and then it'll be very interesting to see how the wingbacks kind of come into picture. With Liverpool, it's a lot of certainty. With City as well, there's some certainty, some degree of certainty in terms of which players would be kind of a part of the 11. Tottenham is a bit all over the place right now, especially in terms of defense, because now there are options. So we don't know if Doherty is going to start. We don't know if Perisic is going to absolutely start every game. But if Doherty stays fit, and I mean there are chances. We have seen Doherty playing really really well last season as well, right? He had a stretch where he got a lot of FPL points. He was playing really well. We saw the old Doherty of the Wolves team that all of us loved watching in general and from an FPL perspective as well. So there are chances that that could happen this season as well. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, absolutely a good option. Yeah, I will review your drafts as well. I will just probably just finish the conversation here regarding midfielders and probably get back to the drafts. So in terms of defense, I'm pretty sorted. Again, this is nowhere fixed, but let's say if you're going for a premium defense, these could be options. If you're probably looking at three defenders, if you're playing a back three, for example, by a chance, then doubling up on Trent Robertson also is decent, and then probably getting a Cancelo, for example. A fourth defender would be a Chilwell or a James. And if you are probably just picking three from different teams, then it'll probably be James, one of James, Chilwell, Cancelo, and then Trent. I think this is the kind of way to go for in terms of the defense. Quickly coming to midfield, we already spoken about Salah. We've spoken about 8 million options as well. So I would at least want to have one 8 million spot, if not two. Personally, I would want to have two if I'm looking at my own team, because then it gives me the flexibility to choose between Saka, Mount. I mean, there are options. Madison, when Leicester, I think from game week 9, they have a good run. So that could be an option. You have Mahrez as well. Again, a lot of conversation around what happens to Mahrez, whether he starts regularly, in terms of what happens to Haaland, how he fits into the system, because now they're playing with a proper number 9. So there are elements that could change there. There could be a change of shape. There could be a change of structure there as well. Kulusevski at 8 million. I mean, a lot of people are saying he's fine. To me, he looks a little bit expensive on that side. I mean, they're better option than Kulusevski. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at a Spurs option and you can't afford a Harry Kane and a Son, so I mean, he's a cheaper option, of course, so you can go there. So let's see. In terms of 8 million, I probably right now go for Saka again. Nothing is fixed. Just in terms of how he's played, just in terms of what the importance of his is in for the Arsenal team. Of course, Gabriel Jesus and Martinelli could come into play, and then his returns might not be as relevant as they were last season. But just for the sake of conversation, we get in Saka here. This could be Mahrez, this could be Diaz as well. If I'm not going for Robertson, then this will definitely be Diaz, Luis Diaz, absolutely. Then is where things get very, very interesting, because now we have another decision to make in terms of what happens or what we do next, right? What formation are we playing? Are we playing a 5-3-2, or are we playing a 5-2-3, or are we playing a 5-4-1 where we go heavy in midfield? We let go of the attacking spots. Let's say that we are going for a 5-4-1 where we're just going for one striker. We probably stick in a Haaland or a Kane. Again, there's a conversation to be made here in terms of which one to go for, because both of them, are good options. There's a lot of conversation around Harry Kane doesn't start that well. He's never scored in August. I mean, there are certain stats that support that theory. It's not an absolute certain. It's not an absolute certainty. I mean, to think of a certain player not doing well in a certain month is absolutely crap. I mean, I personally, again, you might have a different opinion here, but that's just my opinion. That's just my thought. But yeah, I mean, yes, he's a slow starter, or he's started slowly in certain months of certain years. I mean, to 2020-21 was a different example altogether, where he started really strongly, right? So you can't say that for certain that Harry Kane is not going to score in August, or he's not gonna play well. You can't say that for sure, because fixtures are there. If you look at the fixtures, there's Southampton, there's Chelsea, Wolves, Nottingham Forest, West Ham, Fulham. I mean, the fixtures are decent till even if you just look at August, right? So there are chances that he does well. Last season, of course, was a bit difficult because there was a lot of murmur, there's a lot of chatter around what happens to him. Does he stay at Tottenham? Does he leave? He probably wasn't in the right frame of mind. So there was a different conversation to be had there. But then again, Haaland could be, if you're not certain about Haaland, if we don't know for sure that Haaland's going to start, people believe, experts believe, FPL managers, content creators, and all of those people, they believe that he's going to start, he's going to, blast off, and he's probably going to take FPL by storm, which could absolutely happen. I'm not denying that. I'm just playing the devil's advocate here in terms of, I mean, we expect him to start. He may start most games as well, because he's an expensive signing. He's an important player. We know about his qualities. We know what he's done in the Bundesliga as well, and wherever he's played so far. But again, he's not right now. You can't say that for sure. I mean, you don't know what's happening in Pep's mind, right? The preseason will help us. The games will help us. We will understand Man City's shape. We will understand how they're playing. I don't expect him to play as a false nine. I mean, I don't really expect him to do that. But yeah, with a proper number nine, maybe Haaland, gets more of the ball. Maybe, of course, we know how deadly of a shot he has in him. So he will definitely score goals. Is it that how many minutes does he play, and does he, start off by playing every game 90 minutes? Considering we have the 5 substitution rule as well, I'm not too sure right now, right? And if you look at fixtures, Man City has really, really good fixtures. You can absolutely get him in if you're confident that he's going to start most games. I think he's a good captaincy option as well, right? So in case of Salah, if Salah is not performing, if Salah is not there in your team, you have an alternate option who has decent fixtures in the beginning. I know a lot of people might not go away from Salah, considering, I mean, it's also, a fear of missing out, right? FOMO, right? That everybody's probably captaining Salah. If you don't captain Salah, even if he blanks, that's fine. You might not think that if he blanks, and, you probably can take a chance, captain a different player and gain from those different players. We don't, I mean, the human mind, human tendency is programmed in such a way where we don't think of that. We'll think about, what happens if, we'll think negative. We'll think about what happens if Salah scores, 10, 15 points, a couple of goals, a brace, 3 bonus points, and everybody's getting those points, and I'm probably missing out, right? And I go for a Haaland and maybe somebody else, maybe a Son, for example, with a great fixture, can score, cannot score. I mean, there's absolutely a chance there, and I miss out and I don't score any points, or maybe less points. Then I start losing a lot of rank. So there is a risk there. The risk element is definitely high, because you're going against the template. But then again, there's always a different way of playing FPL, and you can still do well. You don't have to really follow the herd, follow the crowd. See the fixtures, see if there are better options, see if you want to take that much risk, see if you are a safe player, if you want to go, with the template, with the crowd, and you don't want to really, take a lot of risk. Make your moves slightly here and there, and then, target a few hidden gems and slowly climb up ranks. That's also absolutely fair way to play. But yeah, I mean, there is definitely a conversation to be had here where we, choose between a Kane and a Haaland. But I think one of that spot is absolutely nailed because I personally don't see a strategy where I go for a Jesus, for example, up top. There could be certain upgrades that could be made elsewhere on the pitch. If I just go with a Jesus, I maybe don't go for a Saka. Right now, we don't even know how Jesus is going to fit into the system because a lot of people are saying that he might play as a number 9. A lot of people are saying that he might drift out on the right as well. So yeah, not too sure there. That's why I personally am not seeing these ownership percentages just yet. It's too early to kind of look into these figures. There's a lot of data to be analyzed. There's a lot of games or preseason content to be analyzed in terms of what happens where and which player is doing what. But yeah, Kane is still a known devil in terms of what he's been doing. Yes, there's all, as I said, there's a conversation that he doesn't do well in August and all that stuff. But I personally would not want to believe that. I would want to see the preseason. I would want to see the games. I would want to see his fitness levels. I would want to see how Tottenham is playing now with Richarlison also in play. But I think the early hunch is probably towards Kane and not Haaland, which again might not be liked by a lot of people because I think a lot of people would absolutely go for Haaland, which is absolutely fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So let's say we go with Kane. The other two spots I'm not too sure of because if we look at other options, right? Let's just see what people are doing at the moment. Haaland, Jesus, Greenwood is an option. I mean, he's not really an option. He just is a dead striker, so we'll probably just take him for now. Darwin is again, Darwin Núñez is an option who could come into play, who's already owned by 16% people, but right now we are not sure about how Liverpool are going to play with him into picture, right? So we'll probably have to look at that. Really not excited about the other picks, to be very, very honest. I mean, I am not really looking forward to any 6.5 or maybe 5.5 million options. Yes, there is Undav, there is Mitrovic, Jota. I'm not too sure of because he's 9 million. He's a hell lot of money here. And again, I'm not too sure how many minutes is he gonna get in the team. There is Wilson, there's Watkins, Havertz again. If there's a number 9, then his position changes, his output changes. Could be better, could be worse. We don't know yet. Wadi again, not at the beginning, but with that 9.5 price bracket, I think there is a conversation to be made. Absolutely, if we want to downgrade a Kane to a Wadi, invest that additional money maybe to a Son and make some other changes. That's also a direction that you can take. I think if you really want to go for a second striker and if you want him to play, I mean, you look at probably an option which is about 5.5 to 6. I don't think so. The other options, which are around 8 or 7 million, are absolutely, I mean, they're absolutely nailed, but I'm not very, very confident of. I mean, if you look at the options here, there's Werner, there's Calvert-Lewin, there's Watkins. Aston Villa also doesn't have a great stretch of games. I mean, the first 3-4 games are 3 games are really good. Then they have the next 4 as tough fixtures. So that could be different as well. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, in terms of going with the second striker, if we get a cheaper striker who's nailed, right? Let's say Nunda, for example, who's nailed for Brighton because Brighton has been looking for a striker. If he's that one striker who's playing really well or who does well, and there are options there as well. So there is a fight to be made there as well. You have the likes of Neil Mope, you have the likes of Danny Welbeck as well. I mean, we don't really consider them options, but yeah. So minutes could be an issue there. Other options, not too sure just yet. I mean, I'm finding it difficult to go for a second option, which is a good option. If we get somebody from Crystal Palace, maybe one of Mateta or Edward, who's kind of nailed, he could be an option. Solanke is one option, but Bournemouth, I would want to see these promoted teams. I mean, the early fixtures are quite tough. They have Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool. Once that is kind of done, maybe I'll see them for a couple of more games and then kind of take a call because the fixtures for Bournemouth are actually pretty good. And he was their top scorer in the championship last season. So there are chances that he could do well. The first 6 game weeks, maybe even 7 game weeks, that game against Nottingham Forest could be really, really important because we'll kind of understand what's happening there and if he's a legitimate potential option. But yeah, other than that, I don't really see a lot of options. I mean, Nottingham Forest, Awoni. I mean, I hope I've got that name right. Awoniyi. I'll check that name once. But yeah, I mean, he could be an option when Nottingham Forest, their fixtures also kind of ease up from game week 6. So there are potential options that you can probably keep an eye on. I would not probably look at Jimenez and Ketia. Wilson is again somebody who has decent fixtures. I mean, you'll have to look at what to do with him in game week 3 and game week 5, but he gets injured a lot, so we'll have to kind of look at that. But yeah, probably right now my hunch is saying that we probably play one striker up front and we go with two Dutch strikers. If you want to keep a bench option, you probably keep one of Undav or somebody who starts. But I'll probably just keep two 4.5 million options and look at a third other option, which is probably a playing option, maybe in midfield or in defense. Let's say if I'm going at a back four or a back three, for example. So we just choose one of. I mean, we choose anyone. Doesn't matter. We'll just tailor. So now we have three spots. We have about 17 million, and now it becomes a bit tricky, right? Because if we are playing a 5-4-1, then this becomes actually difficult. Then we probably have to make some other changes. Maybe try to downgrade Perisic to a Tomiyasu, save that 1 million, still get an attacking fullback, not a wing back but a fullback who could still do well. But yeah, I mean, as Savios has said that I think that flexibility of 8 million mids gives you a lot of options. Yes, the attacking fullbacks could also, the decisions between those attacking fullbacks and those extra midfielder spots, right? Because you don't really have a lot of options between 6 to 7.5 or 7 to 7.5 with that sort of a price range. 8 million, there are options which you can rotate. So having that flexibility, attacking those two players who are probably talismanic players for their teams, I think that could be really, really important. You'll wait for, I mean, yeah, I also prefer Kane right now. Early hunch again could absolutely change. With the signing of Nunez and 5 sub rule, I mean, there are chances, heavy chances of rotation between Diaz, Jota, and Nunez. Absolutely. I mean, Shubham, you're absolutely right. High chances that could happen. Saka, Jesus, right now, again, in terms of what we already know, it's probably Saka. But I think the penalty discussion could shift in. I think preseason will also kind of give us an idea in terms of where's Jesus. I mean, we're pretty much certain in terms of where Saka would play. Again, that could also change. But I think Jesus will be really interesting to see whether he plays as a number 9 or whether he plays on the right side. Right now, currently, it's probably going to be Saka and probably just sticking up with one, premium forward up front and not going for Jesus. But that could absolutely change. Shen, you'll go with Haaland, and I'm not worried about him if he blanks in the first match because with the amount of chances, I mean, yeah, a blank is not a problem, to be very honest. Whether he's gonna start most games, how many minutes does he get, how does he adapt to the? I mean, I don't think so. It'll be a huge problem considering the quality that he has. But we've seen players from the Bundesliga, from La Liga, coming to Premier League and then struggling here. So right, so I think again, if maybe a lot of people become 1 week too late when Haaland goes absolutely crazy in the first game, because the first fixture is not that easy as well. I mean, I think it's against West Ham if I'm not wrong. Yeah, so City's playing West Ham, away fixture as well. Could be a tricky game. Absolutely could blank, but I'll be more interested to see how many minutes is he getting and what are the positions he's taking, what is the structure of the Man City team, and how is he fitting into that whole puzzle, right? So that'll be more from a longer or from a Haaland, picking Haaland perspective. I think that's more important than seeing whether he, blanks in the first game and then you suddenly go Kane, then you suddenly go Haaland. I mean, it'll be very difficult to play FPL like that. But yeah, Haaland is tempting. He's gonna be very, very popular. I mean, if I'm sure you guys will be reading a lot of stuff. There'll be a lot of threads. There'll be a lot of conversation around Haaland, around how he can explode, around what has he done for, Dortmund and in Bundesliga. Absolutely different league. Could not. There's a high chance that he doesn't replicate that. I mean, I just feel that he probably might do okay in the whole season. But yeah, the hype that is being created around Haaland, that might absolutely be, not the case. But yeah, I mean, can't commit to that, can't say that for sure. Anything can happen. The way Haaland is, I won't be. I mean, yeah, he can score 15 plus goals as well. On the other hand, he can probably just score 5 or 6 goals and kind of struggle in the Premier League, struggle to adapt to the game, struggle to fit into Pep's system, because I think since Aguero has kind of, gotten out of the fray in terms of the Man City game, this is the first time they're actually going to play with a proper number 9, right? So you don't know. Let's see. A 4-5-1 or a 5-4-1 might be the formation until the first while. I mean, yeah. I think in terms of going for cheaper forwards, and I mean, it's actually all positions, right? Going for cheaper forwards, cheaper mids, cheaper defenders. I think the first 5, 6 game weeks, maybe 7 to 8 game weeks, will give us a lot of information about the promoted side as well, right? In terms of who's playing where, who's a regular starter, who's probably a bench player, who's getting some minutes, 10, 15 minutes off the bench and all that stuff. And I think that data, that reading, that information is probably going to be really, really important to then make the next set of decisions, which probably you can make on the wild card, right? Because when you are wildcarding, you don't really have to be heavily dependent on the likes of Man City and Liverpool. Of course, you can still have that core of Man City and Liverpool, but there's a chance that you can probably, reduce that dependency, get some player. Because when we see the absolute fixtures, right, we'll just quickly look at the fixtures here as well. So if we see the early fixtures, Aston Villa has a good run. The first three fixtures are actually pretty good. Then Bournemouth starts getting, and this is just the first 7 game weeks, right? So Bournemouth from game week 5, 6, 7, they have decent fixtures and beyond as well. You can even consider the likes of, we'll probably just quickly check other teams here. Leicester has a decent run. From game week 9 is when they actually, start having good games. Nottingham Forest as well. They also have a prolonged run of fixtures. So there are different teams. There are, especially the promoted ones. I think there are options that can develop. There might be some cheap players that might help you, get in, maybe squeeze in a couple of million here and there. Maybe 1 million in defense, maybe 1 million in midfield, right? Maybe going for a cheap. I think a lot of people would already be going for, maybe at least one cheap striker, if not two. When I say a cheap striker, it's probably a 4.5 million striker. But yeah, that information could be really, really valuable. What is everyone's thoughts on fixture rotation pairs? Who's thinking about having Barnes and Neto? Yeah, Barnes and Neto actually rotate pretty well. Uh, the rotation pairs well. When you look at the overall fixtures, right, you could get a lot of value from that. But then again, though I agree with the rotation, but I'm still not there yet in terms of going for a Barnes and a Neto, because again, there's a lot of conversation around Barnes. Not maybe Barnes, but Neto. If you see Neto's ownership, it's already probably reached about 40%. I might be wrong here, but we'll just quickly check. It's way less than 40%. 22% is he's already owned. I'm still not sure. Yes, he's probably the best 5.5 million option out there in terms of midfielders, and the fixtures are there as well. But we should not forget how Wolves generally play. That could change this season. They might be more attacking. There's a high chance that Neto gets majority minutes as well. He didn't get a lot of minutes last season because of a lot of things. 459 minutes across the whole season. But there are chances that he plays. But again, I can't say that with certainty. I'm just not there yet in terms of a 4.5, a 5, or a 5.5 midfielder spot yet. Midfield is where I'm actually kind of struggling, because Barnes is also not somebody that I'm very comfortable with in terms of just straight away going for Barnes. When we saw statistics, when we saw data last season, when we saw the eye test as well, right? Maddison was always the player or the pick from Leicester in midfield that was coming up. Yes, Barnes did end up scoring goals. He kind of scored a lot of goals in that whole duration, but Maddison was always somebody who pleased the eye, who played really well. Again, there were injury concerns. There were concerns of him getting dropped, and a lot of stuff happened in between. But for me, Maddison still feels like the pick to go. Could change. This season there's no Europe. Brendan Rodgers might have a fixed 11 that he continues for a longer duration. So I absolutely agree with the rotation, but I'm just not too sure in terms of the picks. If you look at Wolves, there aren't a lot of other options to go for. But yeah, when you look at an early hunch, this could be the way to go. But I'm personally, I'm not there yet, to be very, very honest. And I agree, Wolves have a good set of opening fixtures. There's just nothing, nothing wrong with having that thought process, or having that, inkling towards going for that rotation, which Mercy absolutely pointed out correctly. What is Aguero's average FPL score playing up front for City for all his seasons? I'm not too sure. I'll probably have to check that. Not too sure. I'll probably have to check it. I would have. Savi, you're saying I would have thought about rotation, but we're literally planning. Yeah, we're planning for 7 to 8 game weeks, right? So now normal transfers will do, but again, there are two school of thoughts here, right? whether you, whether are you already booking transfers in advance? Uh, are you planning your team in such a way where you can navigate the early, maybe the first 2 to 3 game weeks without making majority transfers? So that's probably a direction that you probably have to choose, right? There's, you don't have to choose one, but yeah, you can. For example, you can go for a Kane. If Haaland does well, you probably shift a Kane to a Haaland, same similar price at least in the beginning. So you can book early transfers, you can book in transfers, and depending on what happens, depending on the new information, the new set of data, etc., I test whatever we can accumulate in the early game weeks, we can adapt to that information. In the early part of the season, it's also okay taking hits, because later on becomes a bit, in fact, a lot more difficult to kind of recover that position, recover that spot that you probably have lost early on in the season. And yes, it is important to have a good start, but again, it's not a necessary thing. You can still end up on a higher rank even if you've started slowly, right? So that's an absolute certainty as well. Coming back to let's go. Coming back to our team and what we have in mind. I'm actually kind of struggling to make a decent team in terms of having all premium forward. Having all premium defenders, and then going for a Kane up front. Of course, I probably won't be investing more money up top, because I just feel there is probably more value in going for somebody probably in midfield, the 8 million spot, as we pointed out. I think that's also that is giving you a lot of flexibility that will add a lot of value, because you have all these players who could really do well. But yeah, in terms of the other options, goalkeepers I won't really change. There's a lot of conversation around Andres Pereira as well, and let me know if what do you think about Pereira in general. But he could be a potential option. He's almost confirmed in terms of joining Fulham. He could be a starter in that Fulham team, costing about 13 million, I think, to Fulham. 4.5 million option. Definitely not going to play for Man United, so that this is going to change here. And he could be one of the options. Southampton also have signed a player, Lavia, if I'm not wrong. He could also be an option. We don't know what Pereira could do in that Fulham team. But if you're looking for a fifth cheaper option, and if you're probably not going to play him, maybe you just want to keep some security on the bench in terms of having a cheap starting option. I think Andres Pereira could be a decent pick. In terms of the other two options, and we have 12.5 million. I really want to go, for that second 8 million spot, which is now becoming a bit tricky. But if we go with somebody like a Neto, for example, just for the sake of the argument conversation here, we have 7 million. I think we'll probably have to make some sacrifices in midfield. If we downgrade a Perisic to a Tomiyasu, for example, right? Considering that Tomiyasu is playing majority games, I still don't think that if Perisic and if we do a comparison of Perisic and Tomiyasu side by side in terms of playing majority minutes, I still feel Perisic is probably going to outscore him. I think Tottenham could have a stronger defense this season. I think there are chances that if Perisic plays in that left wing back spot, I think he could be a lot more attacking. He generally has a tendency to score goals as well, which is not a feature of Tomiyasu's game in general, right? So there are chances that we can probably do a downgrade if there's not a lot to be lost there. And with that additional 1 million, let's say if we probably do a Perisic to a Tomiyasu here, then we'll probably be left with another 8 million spot, which gives us a lot of flexibility, right? Which probably we would want, because we have options in that 8 million spot, which when we downgrade to 7 or 6.5 million, that flexibility doesn't remain there, right? So let's say if we go for Tomiyasu, just for the sake of the argument here, we go for Tomiyasu, we have 8 million, and then we have an option, we have a chance in terms of going for a Diaz. Let's say if we don't have a Robertson here, a Diaz would be an option. Again, the side note here is that right now we don't know in terms of how many minutes is he gonna get, and what will be the rotation in terms of the Liverpool options. But going for options like a Mount then also opens up. We also have, we'll just quickly the price. We also have Madison when the fixtures are easing up. Mahrez is also an option. Then we have Kulusevski as well. Let's say if we play with Haaland, and if we are looking at a Tottenham option, considering that we know what's happening with Kulusevski, Richarlison, Son, and Kane, I think that option could also open up, right? So So this particular thing gives a lot of flexibility. Let's say if we, for I mean, again, just for the sake of the argument, we go for a Kulusevski or we go for Maris here. I mean, this looks like a decent team where we go heavy in, at the back. I mean, there is still some tinkering that you can do here. You can probably downgrade a Saka to a Martinelli, and then you can get some additional money. But then the issue here is that we don't have a lot of options in the 7.5, 7 million price category, right? We have options like Sancho, Gundogan, which were not really great options. Coutinho is something or somebody that, who did well in general in terms of a lot of games that he played. Yes, there were phases where he went on a dry patch and he wasn't getting FPL returns. He started very explosively, but I think with Coutinho, it'll be very interesting to see whether he occupies that second striker role alongside Watkins or Ings. That also is another side conversation in terms of who's going to start there. Whether Ings gets a move on, maybe he leaves Aston Villa, maybe he gets limited minutes. Right now, we don't know that. General belief is that Watkins is probably going to get majority minutes. And with that, you can have Ings playing alongside him. You can also have Coutinho. So if Coutinho is playing closer to Watkins as a second striker, as a shadow striker, maybe, uh, his FPL potential definitely will rise up, right? So that is also a certain downgrade. If I'm looking at Crystal Palace, I'll probably look at Zaha right now. Rafinha, I don't think so is going to stay in the Prem. If he stays in the Premier League, and if he stays at Leeds, maybe he's an option. If he goes to a certain Chelsea or maybe an Arsenal, I still don't understand what's going to happen if he moves to Arsenal or where is he going to play. But there are a couple of options, not much. I'm not looking at the likes of Rashford. I'm not looking at the likes of Smith Rowe. Martinelli, as I said, could be an option as well. Bundia haven't really seen much of him last season, so we don't really know. So let's see. I mean, it is. It's not. I mean, it's not giving me a lot of confidence, to be very honest, and I'm kind of struggling in terms of finding that 7 million, 7.5 million midfield position, which I think with those two 8 million midfielders gives me a lot of flexibility. So this could be the way to go. I mean, it's not absolutely premium at the back with a certain Tomiyasu, but if I shift a Tomiyasu to a Johnny, for example, and Bulls have some decent fixtures, this could be a decent team, right? Again, not fixing anything right now because I'm unsure about a lot of players here. I'm not really sure about Andres Pereira. Let's wait for him to move to Fulham first, and then we'll kind of take that call. But Neto is also somebody. There's a lot of hype. Not too sure just yet. I mean, I'm personally not in the Neto camp at the moment. I need to see a lot more in terms of going with a Neto. But yeah, I mean, according to early conversations of what people are saying, he probably could be the best 5.5 million option out there. There is Pereira, there is Neto. Ramsey is 5.5, but he's also not that consistent. There's Colbeck. Gordon, again, with the departure of Richarlison, I think Gordon could be a lot better than what he was last season. Last season, he got a consistent run of games. This season could be very, very different. Let's say if Everton don't get anyone in that spot, but Everton also would be very interesting to see in terms of where Gordon plays now, right? Because he could be a lot more attacking. He could be on set pieces. Maybe he's on penalties. Not sure yet, but yeah, I mean, there are chances that it can happen. In terms of other options, Bissouma is definitely not an option that you'll probably want to consider. Dewsbury Hall is also somebody who will probably get a lot of minutes. Now, what does he do with those minutes is also another conversation. But I think Dewsbury Hall, yeah, I mean, he's nowhere close to a Barnes or, at least he's not consistent enough to compete with a Barnes or a Madison. Of course, there's a huge price difference. But I mean, he could be a potential cheap option. Struggling to find options. That's why I think the Neto train is already on and people have already taken off on that Neto train. But yeah, still not too sure. Not too sure. Let's see. Van de Beek, I mean, could be an option. So there are some picks that you can probably look at. I'm sure I'm missing a few names as well. But yeah, this probably would be a structure that I have in mind. If you want to go, probably three at the back. Could go for premium, three options. I mean, I've also seen some drafts with a Son, with a Haaland, and with a Salah. I just don't like the overall structure of that particular team because I mean, yes, we're getting three premium options, but then the overall structure kind of goes for a toss, and then it at least to me it was not making a lot of sense, which we'll kind of just see right now as well. Just quickly look at the chat. Yeah, going big at the back should be good for the at least 7 to 8 game weeks, because early wildcard, absolutely right. And then we can gain team value, we can get a lot of data in place, and then look at the cheaper options, look at the high value options, which we are absolutely clueless right now, and then we can take that call. Yes, I did speak about Diaz, Saka, and Kulusevski. I mean, Diaz right now, we still have to see how Nunes kind of fits into that system. What happens to that number 9 and to that left side? Because I think we're pretty much confident that Salah is going to start on the right. But yeah, right now Diaz is a bit tricky. Even Saka for that matter, right? I mean, all three are options. See, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Tottenham, they've had signings. They have new players. Arsenal has Gabriel Jesus. Liverpool has Nunes. Tottenham has Richarlison. So there are options that have kind of come in. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the preseason. I personally think, I mean, there could be some rotation for Kulusevski. There could be a chance that probably Richarlison comes into play. I mean, we still have to see the structure in terms of how Tottenham play. I'm pretty much certain that Saka mostly will start all games, and again, Jesus and Martinelli could kind of fit into the system. We also have Nketiah. I don't think so. He's probably going to start majority games, but yeah, I mean, he could still take off minutes off one of these three attackers, right? So in terms of attacking output, I think Saka with penalties looks really attractive. Even if he doesn't have penalties, he's more of a talisman for Arsenal as compared to what a Diaz could be. Because Diaz, yes, we have Salah. Diaz did really really well. I mean, I'm not taking anything away, and I'll be a fool to kind of believe that Diaz didn't have a great return or a great season, whatever he had with Liverpool last season, right? So yes, there are chances that Diaz could be that third option, but then that conversation kind of comes in between. It's Diaz versus Robertson, right? Which third option? Because I think a lot of teams would already have a Trent and a Salah locked in. So that, I think that's the conversation that you have to have in your mind. That's the thing that you have to look out for. You also have to look out for how Diaz and Nunes and a Jota, because there are no options, right? So there's a high element of risk, considering that it's the five. I mean, the new five substitution rule is also into play from this season. So I think he should get. He has a tendency of coming off early as well. I mean, not because of his fitness, or he probably cannot last 90 minutes. But now Liverpool has options, right? And then they have to keep all the players happy. So let's see. Thoughts on cheaper defense to allow? I mean, yeah, you can go for a cheaper defense as well, but then if you're going for a premium defender, just for the sake of this argument, right? If you're going for a premium defender, that defender's probably gonna be from a top, not even a top six, maybe a top four club. You're probably looking at the likes of Chelsea. You're probably looking at the likes of Perisic. If you're looking at Tottenham, I think it's probably a conversation between a Perisic and a Doherty right now. In terms of other options, you have a Trent, you have a Robertson. You probably, I mean, I don't think so. A lot of people would consider Van Dijk right now, but I think, I mean, you can still look at other options. From Man City, you can look at a Walker versus a Cucurella if he signs, and when he signs for Man City. You can look at other options. Then you have Arsenal as well. I won't really call Arsenal as a premium defense, because there aren't really any premium options. But I just have a feeling with these teams, with the likes of Man City's, Liverpool's, and the Chelsea's, of Premier League, they have a high. I mean, there are three premium defenses, there are three good defenses in the Premier League, right? So they will give you clean sheet points. When you have the likes of Chilwell, James, and the Liverpool and Man City defenders, they have a high chance of giving you attacking returns as well, right? When you compare that with I mean, in general, from a theory perspective, when we see the likes of Kane, especially Kane and Haaland, right? Their forwards, they get one less point for a goal scored. They don't get a point for a clean sheet. I mean, these are smaller nitty gritties which I think a lot of people don't kind of think towards, or move towards, because when they see Salah, when they see Salah is a different conversation, but when they see a Haaland or a Kane, for example, I think they always see goals. They always see FPL points. I'm not saying that's not the case, but then that's a conversation that you're absolutely pointing out, right? In terms of the overall output, which ones do you actually believe could? I mean, I have a certain feeling that players like a James or a Chilwell could absolutely outscore somebody like a Kane, for example. Considering right now, we don't know how Kane is gonna turn up for the season. Conversations around him starting slow in August and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, if we have these strong defenses, keeping clean sheets, attacking returns, there's a high element of risk. I'm not saying there's no risk involved, But there are, I mean, it would be very difficult to kind of just, believe the fact that no, that's not going to happen. So there are chances that that could happen. It's probably going to be a popular strategy where, people are going for a single striker, whether it's Kane or Haaland. And if people are picking one single striker, it's probably going to be one of them. And then they go for a premium defense, because we've seen last season as well with premium defenders, they tend to give a lot of FPL points. With clean sheets, the bonus potential is also very, very high, right? And if we are getting defenders from these teams who are also strong defenses, I think that's a huge bonus. So thank you so much, All Sports Fan Adam. You've pointed that out. Thank you so much for that. Brave to dismiss Haaland from adding to that list. I mean, yeah, insane numbers. If you look at the overall numbers, right? Absolutely insane. I mean, yeah, you're not right in believing that Haaland is gonna bag 200 points. There is Alvarez waiting, who could be a great option, but I just don't. And Haaland has a tendency to get injured, or to get limited minutes and stay out for some time because of injury, and that could also happen in the Premier League because of the whole physicality. The nature of the game is such, right? So yeah, not discounting anything, but yeah, I mean, it can go either way. Right now, I think we have to be open with that possibility that it could be a hyped pick. It could be somebody, or Haaland could be somebody who might struggle with Man City, but absolutely not denying that he could have a banger of a season. I mean, Kane in place of Haaland and Foden. I mean, Foden might be a good option, but again, Foden was great in bits and pieces, in bits and parts last season. There were a huge run of games where he was not getting anything. Of course, this season it could be very, very different, considering that Man City could have a change in structure in place. But yeah, the likes of Foden and Mahrez both could. I mean, open to both options at the moment, and okay going for either of them initially. Tomiyasu is risky. I mean, yeah, still not sure about Tomiyasu as well. Absolutely, there could be a chance that he doesn't get a lot of minutes. Bellerin is back now. Whether he stays at the, I mean, if you guys are aware in terms of if there are any rumors around him, going out of Arsenal, maybe going to a different club, maybe leaving Arsenal as an option. I'm not too sure there. But yeah, I mean, Tomiyasu is not nailed as yet. Haaland is better than Kane. I mean, can't say that, to be very honest. I mean, Kane has been in the Premier League for such a long time. He's a proven Premier League player. He's had great seasons over, a consistent amount of time. Haaland having not kicked a ball in the Premier League, I cannot say that Haaland is a better FPL option. I mean, there's a huge debate. Of course, we can all have that debate in terms of who's a better player, football player in general. But I cannot really say anything about Haaland being a better FPL option right now, just yet. I mean, it's too soon to kind of commit to that sort of a statement. This is my team structure. Will be picking players based on what happens in the next 30 days. Absolutely looking forward to the preseason, to be very, very honest. And let's see. We've chosen James Ward-Prowse, penalty taker. I mean, yeah, he's heavily dependent on free kicks and penalties, which again might not happen every time. In terms of price, I think he's around 6.5. Let's just quickly see that. Yeah, 6.5. I mean, he could be a decent option at 6.5 million. Not saying no, but 6.5 million doesn't also have a lot of great options anyways. I mean, you have the likes of Martinelli, who's 6 million. You probably have Bruno Guimaraes as an option. Neto again, still undivided. I'm still very conflicted in terms of what happens with Neto. Smith is not gonna get minutes. I mean, probably not majority minutes, or not. I mean, there will be certain rotation there. So yeah, I mean, he's an option for sure. But I mean, never really been very, very convinced by a Ward-Prowse. But I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad pick or you should not go for him. Might fancy a Sancho. I mean, Sancho, even a Rashford, I still don't know what's going to happen with Man United in general. Let's just hope something good happens out of whatever is happening at the club. I'm a Manchester United fan. And yeah, life is in tatters at the moment. But I think the likes of Sancho and Rashford could be potential cheap options. All the Man United players have been, slightly underpriced considering what happened over the last season, which is, I think, absolutely fair. But yeah, I mean, though they could be potential options. Harry Kane has scored 4 goals in 21 Premier League. I mean, I know that he scored 4 goals in 21 Premier League games in his career in August doesn't mean that he won't score this August. I mean, yes, the data shows that, the statistics show that, but he's had outliers of seasons. I mean, you could be tempted towards that route in terms of not choosing Harry Kane because of the August thing. Like we don't choose captain picks from generally the first game of the game week. Again, I mean, I'm not. Let's say if Liverpool's playing the first game against Nottingham Forest, doesn't mean that Salah is not going to score because it's the first game of the game week, right? I mean, going by pure logic, yes, going by data, you can probably make an assessment. You can make a judgment about not going for Harry Kane, but it's not a given, right? I mean, you cannot say that Kane is. I mean, Kane doesn't believe in his mind that it's August, so I'm not going to score. I mean, sorry for putting it that way, but I mean, it's just I'm just playing the devil's advocate here, right? I want to understand both sides and then probably take a call. Understand preseason, understand what is the mindset, understand how Tottenham are playing, the structure, the lineups, the fitness levels, how fit is Harry Kane. So we'll probably see based on that. Haaland's ownership is 64.8%, more than Salah, which is 60, Trent 56. I mean, it is actually insane, right? Haaland not having kicked a ball ever in the Premier League has such high ownership. Could still do well, but yeah, I mean, there is a good chance that you can probably bet against Haaland and go for somebody like a Kane. League code for the season. If you were already a part of the league, I've renewed the league. So I think if that's how it works, I think you should be already a part of the league. You just have to make your team and save your team, and I think that should be a good option. I mean, that should be the way forward. But in case if that doesn't happen, I'll still leave the league code and probably a pinned comment, or I'll probably just add that in the description. Odegaard is a good option, not just yet, not there yet, to be very honest. I mean, bits and pieces. He did okay, but I mean, Saka, the likes of Saka, Martinelli, of course, Gabriel Jesus is a different position altogether. But I think those could be the attackers to target. My drafts, absolutely. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Apologies for that. We'll quickly look at your drafts. Mendy, Olsen, Tomiyasu, Cancelo, James, Trent, Perisic, Martinelli, Kulusevski, Salah, Pereira, Neto, Tony, Sam, Greenwood, which I'm kind of discounting, Haaland. So you have a double up in terms of the Chelsea defense, which is absolutely fine. Olsen, Tomiyasu, Cancelo, James, Trent. I mean, there's this. So I'm assuming you're probably going to play 4 at the back with Tomiyasu, or maybe 3 at the back with Tomiyasu and Olsen on the bench, and then you probably will end up playing 4 at the back most game weeks. You have Martinelli, Kulusevski, Salah, and Neto. I mean, I'm assuming that's going to be that's going to be. So you're basically playing a 4-4-2 in the first team. I mean, Haaland and Tony, not sure about Tony. Just don't feel he was consistent enough last season. Yes, we saw that he can do well in terms of. I mean, again, not comparing a Ronaldo to a Tony, but in terms of what trend I saw last season, there were certain games where Tony did really well, where he ended up scoring 10, 12, 15 points. Maybe not 15, but I remember him scoring a couple of goals and getting a double-digit haul. Something what similar to what Ronaldo did. Of course, Ronaldo scored hat tricks, but I mean, he was not consistent enough across the season. Another thing that was very interesting to see that there was a lot of involvement, especially since the time Eriksen kind of came in, right? Things went really well for the likes of Tony and Buemo. And now with a certain Eriksen probably going to Manchester United, I think that will change. So it'll be interesting to see who's the creative output or who's the creative guy in that particular team, and then how does that impact Tony. I think this is the kind of thing that you'll have to keep in mind. And Tony's in that regard, I'm just not too sure. In terms of price, I think he's 7 million, something around that. Has to be 6 or 7, correct. I mean, in the 7 million price category, then you have the likes of Jimenez, but I'm not sure whether you'll probably look at the likes of Jimenez, considering that you're already looking at a Neto or maybe a Johnny, who probably might be better high value options, because Jimenez playing for a Wolves team who doesn't really score a lot of goals is investing a lot of money in, I'm not saying garbage, but yeah, I mean, you might not get a lot of return from that, right? So yeah, I mean, there are options that you can probably look at. Let's just look at the 7 million options. We'll just quickly look at just the 7 million options. And Ketia is probably not gonna get starts now. Ings again, we'll have to see his fitness, and he's also not a player who can play week in week out, especially when the schedule is very tight, right? He's not somebody who plays week in week out, and he gets injured a lot, right? We're not even sure. There's still almost a month, maybe definitely more than a month to go till the transfer window ends, and he might as well leave from the club. I mean, we don't know that for sure. Undav is an example, is an option if you want to go a bit cheaper. If we feel or if we see and know that he's starting games for Brighton, I mean he could be a potential option. But I mean with Tony, I'm just not too sure. What about Jesus? Is he going to be a regular starter? I think he looks. It looks that he's probably going to be a regular starter now. Uh, could be different, could be sharing minutes, within Ketia. Let's say if he plays as a number 9, then probably he will be sharing minutes within Ketia with Martinelli playing on the left and uh, Saka playing on the right, or the other way around, or probably they'll end up switching wings. In that case, I mean, especially with that 5 substitution rule, right? I mean, Arteta has options. If you just look at the Arsenal team, I don't think so. The likes of Pepe, they kind of come into picture, to be very honest. I mean, he could still get minutes, but I'm not expecting him to take off minutes from the likes of a Gabriel Jesus. So I think he probably gets majority minutes, but yeah, there are chances, especially with the 5 substitution rule, that things could change. Maybe Martinelli's bench and Smith Rowe is probably starting on one side, and then Martinelli comes on. I mean, there were a lot of conversation last season, especially about Martinelli playing as a number 9. I think we probably saw it for a couple of games, but didn't happen in the entirety. Yes, Martinelli probably had the best season in terms of getting number of minutes at least in the Premier League, and he got a consistent run of games. But then towards the latter end, there were a set of games where he was getting rotated a lot with the likes of Emil Smith Rowe, which is something that could happen this season as well. But I think in terms of the structure, it'll be very interesting to see how Jesus kind of fits in, whether he plays on as a number 9 or whether he moves to the right, maybe, I mean, maybe to the left as well. I don't think so this is probably going to happen, but yeah, I mean there are chances that Gabriel Jesus gets majority minutes. Shoaib, if so hey, I'm sorry, I've got your name wrong. You've shared your team here. Edison Raya. I mean, if I personally am, if I'm going for 2 keepers, I'll probably just go with Edison. Considering I'm already spending 5.5 million on Edison, I probably would try to save that 0.5 million from Raya, because it's a lot of money for goalkeepers. Trent Robertson is a good double up. Tierney could go cheaper here with somebody if Tomiyasu is fit enough and consistent enough, and he gets regular minutes. I think, because in terms of fitness, he's definitely better. I feel, this is a personal thing, but I think that he's probably better than Tierney. Tierney, I mean, even when he was playing attacking, and it's just that he was not really getting a lot of attacking returns, and then he got injured a lot. So maybe there's not a lot of value to be extracted there. We'll still have to see, because he'll still have to stay fit for a consistent amount of time for us to kind of have that dilemma. But right now, it's probably not Tierney. Mitchell, Mitchell is 4.5, if I'm not wrong. There are a lot of other options as well. I mean, you could go for somebody from Wolves as well, who have a decent run of fixtures. If we look at other 4.5 million options, we'll quickly check them. I mean, there are lots of options, so we'll probably just filter them by what people are going for right now. I mean, Justin is an option, especially when Leicester have good fixtures from game week 9. I think he could be an option if he's regular. We've seen his potential. We've seen he can be attacking, especially when he's playing out wide. So he's an option. Lamptey's also somebody. I think Lamptey's also not been talked about a lot or enough. I mean, last season we saw him. Of course, he came back from injury, so we didn't get a lot of information. It was also not the accurate way of kind of measuring his performances. But if he's playing as an out of position winger, I mean, that could be something to look out for, especially when we're talking about a strong Brighton. I mean, he's considered a defender, right? So he will still end up getting clean sheet points even if he's not playing as a defender. and if he's playing as an out of position attacker on, on whatever side he's playing at, I mean, there could be attacking returns as well. So there are options that you could go for. But yeah, I mean, I'm still not very convinced with Mitchell. I think there could be better options to go for. In that, I mean, Williams right now, of course, he's listed as a Liverpool defender. But if the conversation is that he moves, then I think he could be. I think there were conversations about him moving to Forest, if I'm not wrong. Let me just quickly check that. But I think if he moves to what I was hearing is Nottingham Forest, I think he could be a starting defender, and I think he could be a lot of value as well. And he's probably going to save, or probably will end up saving you some money there. Yeah, Nico Williams, Nottingham Forest. So if he moves there, then I think he could be a potential option who's cheaper as well, right? Because in terms of 4 million defenders, you don't really expect them to start. Somebody like a Tompkins might not start for Palace. So yeah, let's see. I mean, there are options that you can go for. So take up the next one. I'll just complete your team. In fact, I didn't complete your team. Odegaard again, not Odegaard, Ward-Prowse, Zaha. I mean, there are better options to kind of go for if I'm looking at Arsenal. I know if I'm not looking at Saka, I might look at Martinelli as well. I just feel Martinelli is a better option in the Arsenal team. Ward-Prowse as well, he's heavily dependent on set pieces, as I said earlier, and that doesn't happen often. Zaha again, if we know that Zaha is pretty much nailed, but if he in that 7 million price category, yes, there aren't a lot of options that you could probably go for. I mean, you could go for Coutinho as well, who has I mean, the first three fixtures for Coutinho are really good. Then there's a decision to be made in terms of what to do with Coutinho. And there could be a switch there. The likes of Rashford. Right now, I'm shooting arrows in the dark with a certain Rashford, but yeah, I mean, there could be potential options. Not very, very convinced with Barnes. Gordon again a lot cheaper, but could be an option as well. Uh, Considering that he might get more game time and might be more relevant to the Everton attack now. So yeah, I mean there could be a lot of other options. I mean I could see this team in a slightly different way, where again I'm not very convinced with, and that's probably just me going against everybody and going against everything what in terms of what people are saying, but straight away thinking of going for Neto, not there yet, to be very, very honest. So let's see. I know, uh, just a it's an advice, or it's probably a thought that I generally have. I mean, going with what other people are selecting and having in their teams is probably not the best way to do it. I've put Neto just for the sake of the argument or the conversation in terms of that 5.5 midfielder spot, which could be a different player as well. But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people are on the Neto train right now, but I'm not. I cannot say that for certainty that he's a a sure shot option. He looks like the best 5.5 midfield option, but I mean we could get some other options as well. Savio, your draft is Mendy, Trent, Cancelo, Chilwell, Tomiyasu. Looks pretty good. A double up on Chelsea there. Then Cash has a 5 million option, which is also a good option. I think he's probably one of the best options in that 5 million price category. Salah, Diaz, Saka, Pereira, Neto, Haaland, Kane. I mean, you could have an option of playing Undav and one of Haaland or Kane, which is pretty much fixed. And or you could, I mean, I can see you playing Trent, Cancelo, Chilwell most weeks. Maybe one of Tomiyasu, Cash, maybe even both, and then probably you play a 5-3-2 with Salah, Diaz, Saka, or maybe you can even play a 5-4-1 with with a Pereira on the bench, and then you have Undav and Greenwood on the bench as well. So that, I mean, decent team for right now, but yeah, I mean things could still change. As I said earlier, not there yet in terms of Pereira. First of all, we're all assuming that he's gonna be a regular starter. Things could change. Yes, of course, Fulham are spending money to buy him, so we are expecting him to start, but things could absolutely change. So yeah, let's see. Overall, decent team, but a couple of players are not convinced. But I think that's generally probably just me at the moment. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, not there yet. How about this one? Mendy, Olsen, Trent, Robertson, Laporte. Laporte again could be decent value. I mean, there's a conversation to be had in terms of downgrading a Cancelo and then probably going for a certain Laporte. He's shown that he can get attacking returns. He can get goals from set pieces, corners. So there are chances that he could do well. But yeah, it's gonna be a very unpopular move. It's gonna be a differential move. But then there's a high chance of losing out a lot with what a Cancelo could do as well. So it's a risk, but I mean, if you're okay taking that much of a risk early on, maybe yes. If you want to play a bit safer, want to go a bit template, don't want to lose out on the absolute gain with the Cancelo would be a lot lesser than what you could lose, right? So there's a conversation there. Then you have Neto, Kulusevski, Salah, Pereira, Martinelli. I mean, yeah, somewhat similar to what Savio's team was, which could be okay. I mean, yeah, couple of players. I've mentioned this a couple of times already. Not there yet, but overall decent team. Not again. We're so far off from the first game week. Can't just fix a team right now. But yeah, I mean, you could have a base. You could have a starting point in terms of what you're initially thinking, but absolutely be ready to change the entire team and do something very very different when that game week 1 deadline comes. It could absolutely happen. I mean, locking on players this early is probably not right. There's a lot of content, a lot of football, a lot of a lot of observations to be had over this whole month, and I think things could change there. Are you expecting Vestergaard as a lesser regular starter spend this? I mean, I'm thinking that he's probably gonna get minutes, but it's actually a bit tricky. I still feel that because of no Europe, I think Brendan Rodgers would probably rotate a bit, but I think he still wants a certain stability, especially in defense. Considering what happened last season, I mean, they conceded a lot of goals. They were not getting enough clean sheets, so I expect him to start. From an FPL perspective, of course, he's 4 million, so I would want him to, let's say if he's in my team, I would want him to start. But then again, I could get a lot of other value if they can keep clean sheets. I could get a lot more value from a certain Justin, for example, if he's starting, regular games, or if even Ricardo Pereira, if he can start regularly, I think he could also be a lot of value. But yeah, I mean, there are options there. There is Fofana, there's Amate as well, there's Evans as well. So there are options, but I think I'm expecting Vestergaard to play a major role this season. But I mean, preseason would tell us as with everything else, and I think we'll have our answers soon. As a United fan, do you think Ilanga will get his chance? I mean, he should. He's absolutely. You're absolutely right. He's young. He's hungry. He wants to prove a point. And he did really well whenever he was given. We saw certain shades of immaturity, which is absolutely understandable considering the level that he's playing at, considering from where he's kind of coming from. So there is an absolute chance that he will have that rawness about him, right? And that could absolutely be okay. But I mean, Rashford had a very poor season last season. He definitely is a good player. I mean, we've seen Rashford, being or playing really well for Man United. Of course, last season there was so much going wrong, and United was all over the place, which is still kind of the scene or the equation right now, which could be very very different. But I think he should get chances, or he should probably get more chances. But then again, with Ten Hag, with how he's training, how he's developing Elanga, I think that's also going to be very very important. I mean, yes, Elanga did get his chance, but now what is that next step that he has to take, right? And how is Ten Hag and his coaching staff helping Elanga to kind of reach, or aim to reach his full potential, or at least strive towards that, is also going to be really useful. So I'm looking forward to the United preseason as well, in terms of we'll have some idea in terms of if at all we've signed any players for that matter, and if those players are there in the team, how is the structure? How I mean, I'm really interested to see what happens if we sign a certain Frankie De Jong, for example, which I don't think so is probably going to happen. But let's say if we sign him, are we going to play a diamond with Bruno as playing as a false nine, and then we have the likes of Christian Eriksen, then we have Frankie De Jong as well playing as two sides off the center mid. So I mean, and then it'll be interesting to see who plays out a little wider, right? So I think he should get more chances. From an FPL point of view, not really. I mean, very interested, keeping an eye on for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's too early to kind of say what happens with United. What happens with Rashford as well, right? What will be his position? Whether he's gonna get starts? What is gonna happen with him? Yeah, open to understanding what happens, but yeah, no really strong thoughts there. I think a couple of more preseason, training sessions, and then a couple of games maybe will probably give us some idea, and then we'll have a certain, at least certain thoughts in a certain direction, and then we can kind of build from there. mm, Thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you for joining. It's a pleasure having you always, and thanks and welcome to the new FPL season. All the best for your exam. I hope you do really well, and do study a bit if you have some time. Yeah, great to always chat with you. Rumors are there about Ericsson signing for Man United. I mean, it's not official yet, but yeah, I mean, it should not really. It depends on how United play, right? If United plays a diamond, because I don't think so they can play in the same position. So if they play as a diamond, maybe without a number nine, without a proper striker, Bruno could play as a number nine, as a false nine, and then Eric. Let's say even if we don't sign a Frankie De Jong, maybe somebody like an Ericsson could play with a McTominay or a Frey. I mean, it has to be McTominay. Could play with him in the center. So there are chances that that could happen. And in fact, if that happens, I think Bruno then becomes a lot better in terms of attacking returns. I mean, he could become a legitimate option as well. But I think it'll be. I personally believe or feel that Ronaldo's leaving, so he's definitely not going to stay. I mean, at least that's what I think. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think so. He's gonna become a worse player or a bad player. I mean, whatever he already is, right? I mean, whatever he already was. Of course, his first season he was absolutely great. He was getting a lot of pens, and there was a lot of dependency on penalties as well, which kind of dried up a lot last season. And this season could be something similar as well in terms of not getting enough penalties, or Man United not getting enough penalties. But yeah, in terms of the overall attacking output, I think it could probably make Bruno Fernandes, at least get him the or give him the ability to get more attacking returns, and then that would lead to more FPL points in general, right? So let's see. Yeah, I mean, he could be sharing set pieces as well, because you would expect somebody like a Christian Eriksen to be on set pieces. So I mean, there would be certain pluses, there would be certain minuses as well, but I mean, yeah, interested to see what happens there. So let's see. Great, guys. I think we'll probably stay on for a couple of more minutes, and then we'll probably, call it an end. Thank you so much again for joining. If you've not subscribed to the channel, please feel free to do that. There's a lot of FPL content coming. We have, a lot planned for the preseason. We'll be, of course, talking about. I'll just take a couple of minutes, maybe just to give you guys an idea in terms of what we are planning to do. So there'll be a lot of preseason content in terms of course, we have the usual. I was thinking to kind of do. I mean, it's not a rule, FPL rules or how to play. I mean, it's kind of a how to play series, but we'll do some videos in terms of overall strategies in terms of what is the macro level strategy of playing the game, explaining the rules a little bit, especially to people who are probably playing this for the first time, or probably playing it or have played it for the couple of times, and they would probably want to get some more insight in terms of how to play the game better. So there's one kind of playlist dedicated to that. Then we'll also be kind of covering, and feel free to give me suggestions, anything that you guys want to see on the channel. I think that'll be really interesting to see in terms of what we can do. We'll also be covering the newly promoted teams, and because there could be options from those teams, right? So it'll be very weird to kind of discount them from the very beginning. Of course, we'll be keeping a close eye on those certain players, on those value options, which will help us get more premium and more better options in other areas of the pitch. So we'll do a couple of videos on promoted teams. Then we have those standard videos in terms of which midfielders we can target, what are the different formations that you can kind of go for. So there's a lot of content planned, and if you want to see that, if you are interested in it, please feel free to watch all of the stuff that we do on the channel. There's also an Instagram channel, by the way. We are also active on Instagram, and we do a lot of stuff there as well. So you can also check out that content. It's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be a lot of interesting stuff that I'm sure a lot of other people are doing as well. So do follow them as well. I mean, of course, we are all kind of playing this game together. Of course, we are competing against each other. I'm competing against you guys. I'm sure you are as well. So I think it's going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of good changes, a lot of. I mean, I think this season going to be a bit different because we also have the World Cup in play, and I think with that additional sort of a wild card in place, I think the kind of or the way we play the game in general would probably change a little bit. So I think that'll be really cool to see. Looking for lots of people, including Neto. I mean, yeah. I I personally feel right now, if you just ask me just raw thoughts, I think it's he's being overhyped by. I mean, he's a classic case of somebody who's being talked a lot in the FPL community, especially the serious FPL community, where a lot of people see owner. I mean, a lot of casual players, what they do, they see the ownerships, they see what transfers people are making, maybe see a couple of videos, and everybody's talking about a certain Neto who hasn't really done anything, to be very, very honest, in FPL so far. So it's that jumping onto that train, where and you have that fear of missing out, that if I don't get a Neto, I don't know what will happen. But I mean, you can absolutely do that. I would probably not do that with a premium option or with a very expensive player, because with Neto you don't really have anything to lose, right? He's low. I mean, he's low in price. He's cheap as well, so you're not really at a lot of risk here. I mean, if you look at other 5.5 million options, just to kind of get an understanding in terms of why people are saying this, right? I mean, why Neto is all of a sudden, I mean, he's no Salah, absolutely not. But I mean, people are treating him like, he's probably going to score 20 goals a season. I mean, he could absolutely do that, but I personally don't think so. That's probably going to happen. But if you see other 5.5 options, right? I mean, people have gone for a Murphy. I think that's more because he's a 4.5 million option, which they can just take in their teams and probably just make him sit on the bench. This Pereira, who is a starter, who could be a starter. I mean, first of all, he has to officially sign and be unveiled by Fulham and added in the game as a Fulham player. Then he has to start games. Then he has to probably give us at least a couple of points where he can just give us appearance points and get those starts in place. Ramsey, maybe not. I mean, I'm actually, to be very honest, I'm probably not gonna go through the entire list, but in case, or in certain picks that I'm actually looking forward to are probably Gordon. I think he'll be very interesting to see in terms of how he plays into that Everton system. Dewsbury Hall is also maybe a safer option. I mean, Neto looks attacking because he plays a lot up front. Van de Beek could be interesting. Not sure what happens to him. But yeah, I mean, Ulisse is another one from Palace. Someone to look out for. He could be an option, maybe as well. I'm not too sure just yet. So yeah, I mean, I understand the craze of Neto, because in that option you don't really have a lot of other options who are attacking, who might be nailed. I mean, Billing is also somebody. I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are talking about Billing because of course he's from Bournemouth, and Bournemouth players are not very attractive. They're not very fancy picks from an FPL perspective. But Billing could also be an option. Bournemouth have decent fixtures, at least from game week 5. They have a good run of fixtures, so he could be somebody that we probably should look out for. I mean, he could be attacking. He could get some attacking returns as well. So yeah, but in general, yeah. I mean, I see the appeal of why people are going for a Neto, but that's okay. I mean, we have to see preseason if that's the way you play. If the way you play is probably going for the popular picks, then Neto is absolutely fine. I mean, you can definitely go for him. But yeah, any words on Van de Beek? I mean, it looks that he will be a part of or he will be involved in what Ten Hag is kind of planning, or progressing towards. He will get his chances. I mean, there is absolutely no doubt that he's not going to get his chances. Now, what does he do with whatever minutes he gets on the pitch, and is he getting enough minutes to prove himself, is probably going to be the question. I feel it's gonna be a lot better, or a way better season for Van de Beek in terms of whatever disappointment he's had from Man United so far. I think this season will be his chance to kind of prove himself into the system, into the setup. And I think Ten Hag is that manager who could give him a lot of game time as well, right? So yeah, actually interested to see him and his whole situation in the club and in the team, if he goes into the 11, then in the 11 as well. So I think it'll be really, really interesting to see that as well. So yeah, a lot of stuff that we have to kind of watch out for, or look out for. Of course, we'll be updating, or we'll try to update you guys as much as possible in terms of whatever we see in the preseason so that you guys are informed and aware. If you've not joined the league, I'll probably add the league code in the comments or in the in the description as well, so you can join that as well. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on YouTube as well. We'll be doing streams. Maybe the next stream is probably going to be a little bit longer because next week I'm traveling for some stuff and some work. But I think there'll be consistent videos, of course, and you can always reach out for a conversation on Instagram, and we can have a chat. And of course, you can comment on whatever stuff we share, so that's also going to be there. There's a lot of other things also planned, but we'll probably get to them once we are, approaching the season. A couple of surprises, a couple of interesting things that we are planning, and we'll kind of unveil those sometime later. But yeah, let's see. Let's see. I'm very, very excited, very, very interested to, do a lot better this season. I mean, I was doing quite okay for a long time last season, unless the last couple of weeks. But yeah, let's see. Agreement between Chelsea and Sterling, City and Chelsea negotiating. I mean, there are signs, and there's a high possibility that he gets to Chelsea. In terms of his playing time, it actually depends on that. And I spoke about this, early on in the stream. It depends a lot in terms of the structure that Chelsea play, in terms of whether they can sign a number nine, whether somebody like Ronaldo probably gets into Chelsea, maybe somebody else, because now Lukaku's not there, right? So in the current setup, they only have Havertz as an option. I mean, they don't really have any forwards, to be very, very honest, right? One is, I don't think so. One is probably going to play in the middle. He's probably going to drift out wide and be a little bit all over the place. But yeah, I mean, Sterling, I think of course, Sterling, if he gets into that Chelsea setup, gives a different dynamic, makes a lot of bursting runs. Would be a good signing for Chelsea as well, because he's not getting enough minutes in Man City, and he still has years in him, right? Like a good amount of years, because he has to play for England as well. So I think the deal is going to be confirmed. I think they're going to sign him, and I think he will get regular minutes. We've seen with Sterling, I mean, he has the potential to explode. And we've had Sterling, of course, with the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, Sergio Aguero at that time, and cheaper options like a Gundogan, for example. It was always a bit tricky to kind of own Sterling, and I mean, there were a lot of times where we kind of took that risk, and we weren't really given a lot of benefits from that. We also had Bernardo Silva, who did really well last season. Plus, we have the likes of Foden, Mahrez, etc. So there are a lot of cheaper options as well, where you could get a lot more value. But with Sterling at 10 million and even higher, in prior seasons, I think it becomes a bit tricky when you are kind of going for a player who's not even nailed, right? And nailed players in that Pep roulette is very difficult to kind of predict. It was a little bit easier last season. This season could be different, could be similar. Only time will tell, but we'll see. I think he'll do well with Chelsea if he confirms and signs with Chelsea. I think he will do well. He should get more attacking returns. I don't think so. He's gonna play as a number nine or a striker. He's definitely gonna play out wide. But then there are conversations about Ziyech leaving. He could go to AC Milan as well if that deal is not. I don't think so. That deal's confirmed. I think the conversations and the talks are still ongoing. But we'll see. I think he has a tendency to do well. I mean, he has the potential to do well, and yeah, I mean, he could be an option maybe from Chelsea right now. Let's see. There aren't a lot of options in attack. I mean, Havertz, Werner, they don't look really appealing options at the moment, but that could absolutely change, right? Great. I think with that we'll end today's stream. Thank you so much for joining. It was lovely talking to you guys. Lovely knowing your thoughts, your teams, in terms of whatever you guys are thinking. I also have certain ideas now, in terms of now when I'm talking about it. A lot could change in the next 1 month. So stay tuned. It'll be a lot of fun. We will do a lot of stuff together. It's a long season, and we'll all grow and progress together. We'll all do well, of course. The whole idea of this game, of course, is to do well, but also to enjoy the game at the same time and have some beautiful and lovely conversations, and of course we'll have that. Last season your overall rank was 100k. Mine was 75, dropped from I think 23, 24 to 75 in the last few cup 3 or 4 game weeks. It was a horror. I mean, the my worst rank was of the whole season was 45k, so 45,000, and it was weird. So anyways, trying to improve your rank this season, expecting absolutely looking forward to having more conversations with you, and Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, so you can get latest updates, any information that we release on. We're also doing some transfer stuff, so if you're interested in watching out transfer news, any information on rumors or any confirmed transfers, do check those videos out as well. We've already done a few, and we will be uploading as and when we get some more information on transfers. So yeah, just to get some more information about football, always love to share that. Great, thank you so much. I'll sign off from here. I'll be seeing you guys very, very soon. I'll probably post some updates on Instagram in terms of where and what we can do together. But yeah, I mean, there will be some content. I'll be also giving some information about that as well. But yeah, I mean, looking forward to all of that, and have a great time. Keep tinkering with your teams. Watch a lot of football, whatever you can get your hands or eyes on, and I think it'll be great. You must improve on 12K. I mean, top 1K, absolutely. Should not be any pressure. We'll all see and where we go from there, and of course what we can achieve. But yeah, don't take the pressure of 1K, 10K. I still feel it's a huge bubble, and it hurts your head if I've been in that space. That's why I'm telling you from experience. You should not have that thing in terms of 1K, 10K. Start enjoying the game. Start making good, practical, logical decisions. Think about the game, of course, but don't let it affect your mental health, because that's high priority. That's really, really important. And I know that we are all passionate about this game, but it's a game at the end of the day, right? With that note, signing off, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye bye.